Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too.
All right, welcome in. The other day, I was working out, and I've been doing a lot. If you've been listening to the show for a while, I've mentioned it quite a few times. I had hip surgery about a year and a half ago, and then I had a second one done earlier this year. So I've had two done in the past year and a half, and I've been doing quite a bit of rehab and stuff, and meeting with the specialist, and then I've been also still keeping up with my normal workouts. There's a part of me where a lot of times where I push too hard, where I end up trying to do everything and I don't recover enough. And then my body just fights back on me. My nervous system already is just very overloaded. And so I end up getting hurt. Like recently, I tore a hamstring playing softball. So that's no fun. So that adds on to, a lot of the work that I need to do. And it kind of, puts a halt on some things. But it also is a blessing because I used to, there's a book, I'm blanking on it, I'm blanking on who wrote it, but it's called The Gift of Injury. But I used to think injuries were just this terrible thing. And obviously short term, you're like, man, why is this happening to me, right? We feel bad, which is, normal when things like that happen. But through injury, a lot of times injuries happen because of weakness. That makes sense, right? Something breaks when it's weak. And through injury, we can learn, to improve ourselves so we can prevent it, moving forward. And a lot of times it could be a real blessing, right? These small tweaks, these small pains and things like this can, when they happen, if we listen to them and if we discover why it happened, then we can make the improvements necessary so it doesn't happen again. But a lot of times what happens is, we pull a hamstring and then we end up going back and doing the same exact thing and then pulling the hamstring again. And you got to break that cycle. You got to figure out why it happened. But through this process, I was thinking a lot of, the clients I've worked with over the years. And so I've been coaching for about a decade now. And through that time, I believe I've only had one client has ever worked out too much where it's probably a good idea if you took a day off. The majority of clients, that's not the issue, right? For the average dad, for the average person, it's not really a problem of working out too much. In the personal training world, we're really big on, you want to rest, you want to recover 100%, right? We want to rest, we want to recover. I'm not talking about sleep. Sleep is for me, it's kind of separate because yes, we need to make sure we're getting enough sleep. But when it comes to working out, when it comes to doing strength training, when it comes to doing cardio, the average person needs to be doing more, not less. And so, like I said, I've only had one client ever, and it was actually my very first client. And so he was a college professor. He ran every single day, and then he weightlifted multiple times a week, and then he hired me to work with him. And as a young trainer, when I first started there, I was a little overwhelmed or a little anxious when I was meeting with him because I was like, why is he hiring me? This guy's in great shape. This guy is in better cardio shape than I am, and he's also really strong. Like, what can he learn from me? But he really was a student. I say a student of the game. He was willing to learn, wanting to try different things and stuff. And I learned a lot from him because no matter how advanced you are, no matter how long you've been in the game, you can still learn and something. And so it ended up being, I ended up really enjoying working with him. I believed I worked with him for about 2 years. Yeah, I enjoyed that. But, he was probably the only person that probably could have benefited from a little time off, right? Where he was doing so much where it was actually interfering with some of the muscle. Obviously, if you're just working out to work out, you don't have any specific goals. You can do a lot. But he was wanting to build some strength. He was wanting to see some visible abs and stuff. He was already very lean and stuff, but he wasn't allowing his body to recover. And so strength, when that happens, it can be very difficult to build strength. And so he's probably the only one I've ever had who I've had to tell to kind of just pull it back a little bit, right? And so if you look online, if you go on Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're getting your information, YouTube, there's a lot of, we need to make sure we're resting. We need to make sure we're recovering. 100%. Like you need to make sure you are, right. Especially one of the biggest things I see when it comes to rest and recovery is that people don't take long enough between sets, not days of workouts. And so if you're looking to build strength in the gym, resting 30 seconds is not ideal. You want to rest. You want to be fully recovered in order to build strength. So 2 to 3 minutes between sets. Yes, your workouts are going to take long. You may not be able to do as much if you only have 30 minutes to work out, but I promise you your strength is going to go up. And that's another topic for another day here. But as far as how many days you're working out, the average person doesn't work out 3 times a week. The average person doesn't work out twice a week, right? The average person struggles to get one workout in a week. And so you're probably not doing too much. If you think you need a rest day, there's a good chance you probably need to do the workout. Yeah, I had a conversation with a client earlier this week, actually, and we were talking about, right, he used to really struggle giving himself grace. And now he's at the point where he might be giving himself too much grace. And so on those days where he's really tired, he doesn't feel like doing it, he's like, oh, I had a long day today. I'm just going to end up going to bed and stuff. And that's fine. That's completely fine. If you're exhausted, if you've got a lot going on, absolutely make sure you're prioritizing sleep. Make sure, you have enough energy, to be the best for your family. But if you do this every day, you're going to notice your energy is not improving. You're not feeling better. It's not because you need more sleep. It's not because you need more more rest. It's because you need to work out. You need to take care of yourself. You need to prioritize yourself. When you start working out, yes, you're gonna be tired. Initially, it's something new. You're putting more tax on your body there, but eventually that's going to lead to more energy. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna perform better day to day. And so I think of it as like a continuum here. On one end, we have grace. On one end, we have grit, right? Some people are so far on one end of the grit where they just push through everything. But that's not the majority of people, right? The other side is, grace, right? And a lot of times, we as dads can struggle with this, but sometimes we're not hard enough on ourselves, right? When we had a long day, you're always going to have long days. There's not going to be many days in your life where you're like, what, today was perfect. That was nice and slow. That was relaxed. And so we need to be able to kind of recognize that. And instead of being so far on the grace side, we're somewhere in the middle, right? We're not just pushing through everything. We're not just using willpower all the time, but we're also not just, for lack of a better term, making excuses all the time about why it can't happen, right? We need to be somewhere in the middle. Recognize that, hey, I am tired today. I didn't get, as good a sleep as I wanted to last night. It was a pretty taxing day today, but I had my workout scheduled. I'm going to keep the promises I make to myself. And so balancing grace and grit is so important, because once you can master this, you're going to be able to keep those promises you make to yourself. And when you start doing that, your confidence is going to improve. And all of a sudden you're going to be like, man, I just got 3 workouts in this week. I got 3 workouts in the next week. I've gotten 12 workouts in this month, and I'm really starting to see some changes. My energy is improving and my sleep is improving too. And you're going to start feeling a lot better, right? But if you go so far one way on just giving yourself so much grace and you're finding reasons not to work out, you're always going to find them, right? If you're looking for them, you're going to find them. If you go so far on the other end where you're just pushing through everything, you're tired all the time, you're going to beat your body down, and then you're going to end up having to take some time off, which is, I've struggled with that. That's why, I've pushed through some injuries and ended up making it worse. And so I got to head somewhere towards the middle. I don't want to skew all the way to the other side. We don't want to go for that all or nothing mentality. We want to be somewhere in the middle, right? We need to recognize, am I truly worn out right now? Am I truly tired? Am I truly exhausted right now? Am I just a little bit fatigued? And if you're just a little bit fatigued, then you can probably do a workout, right? If you're dead tired, you can barely keep your eyes open watching the movie with your kids in the evening, then yes, pushing through a workout like that is probably not going to be the best, especially long term if you do that. But you gotta find that balance, right? If you're somebody right now who is always looking for reasons why you shouldn't do the workout or why it's okay to take a rest, then you probably need to push through it, right? Like I said, the majority of people, you don't need to work out less. You probably need to work out more.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.